Hello and welcome. I am Fermion, and today I will answer the question: was Bloodborne actually that good? Yes it was. Now hold on for a second, because we're gonna take it one step at a time. Generally speaking, you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who thinks Bloodborne isn't at least on par with the rest of the games From Software has made up until this point. But why is that? Why does everyone rave over this game so much? Why does it have such a cult following? Why do people want it remastered so badly? Let us take some time and go through the base game of Bloodborne together, and see what makes this game stand out so much, and why it has captivated the hearts of many. The story of Bloodborne takes place in Yharnam, a fictional city, definitely not inspired by Prague. You're an outsider in need of blood administration, and by taking this blood, you become a hunter. Classes in the Souls games don't define your character's endgame build, because you will always have the freedom to build yourself up however you want, and Bloodborne is no different in that regard. So, what classes are there in Bloodborne? You have the Milquetoast, the Lone Survivor, the Troubled Childhood, the Violent Pest, Professional, Military Veteran, Noble Scion, Cruel Fate, and... me? Aw, FromSoft, you guys, you didn't have to, but I'm honored. With your class picked, you can now start the game, only to realize, hold on a second, where's my weapon? Unlike any other Souls game, you do not start off with your weapon right off the bat. The intended path to progress is by encountering this werewolf in the next room, trying to defend yourself and having it kill you, only for this cutscene to play. Welcome to the Hunter's Dream. This is the place you come to if you wish to level up. This is the place you come to if you wish to upgrade your weapons. This is the place you come to if you wish to travel the world. This is your home. For now though, we can't really do much. We can see someone sleeping, and by interacting with her, it turns out she's just a doll. Not much we can do for the time being. But here come the little messengers. They offer you the option to choose your starting weapons. The saw cleaver, the hunter axe, and the pim cane. I love my cane, but for now, I will be using the saw cleaver. You also get to choose your secondary weapon. Normally, in most Souls games, your left hand is reserved for something like a staff to cast spells or a shield to block damage. Not in Bloodborne, baby. You get to choose a firearm, the pistol or the blunderbuss. Generally speaking, your gun is mainly gonna be your tool for parries, but you can also build around it and deal some pretty good damage, all things considered. But for the most part, it will be a parry tool. Anyway, now that we are armed and dangerous, we can take on the werewolf we have previously seen and turn it into mincemeat. Let's talk a little bit about combat in Bloodborne, because it's very, very different from your usual Souls game. Whenever you look up combat about, let's say, Dark Souls, you will often find people who criticize the games to be roll slop. Bloodborne does have rolling as well, but it has the unique feature of turning your rolls into quick steps when you lock onto an enemy. The benefit of quick steps is that they feel much faster than your roll, and they help me position myself better than a roll ever could. In short, it promotes aggressive gameplay. On top of that, Bloodborne has one of my all-time favorite features, the rally mechanic. Basically, if you take damage, you have a 5-second window to regain health from the last hit you've taken. Again, much like a quick step, it promotes aggressive gameplay. You are a hunter. Rip and tear until it is done. All possible thanks to our custom-made hunter tools, designed for all your monster hunter needs. Ever heard the term quality over quantity? That is the best way I could describe Bloodborne's selection of weapons. Every weapon is different, and they all have certain benefits and reasons why they stand out. The Saw Cleaver is a DPS monster. The Threaded Cane is an amazing AoE weapon. Ludwig's Holy Blade is your typical Claymore style weapon. Simon's Bowblade is a sword that can turn into a bow, and so on. Every weapon has two forms distinct from one another, and this type of weapon design is something that we pretty much haven't really seen in any other FromSoft game since then. You know that moment when you put your food in the microwave, you take it out and the food is cold, but the plate is hot? I am gonna have a take that has the same temperature as the food. Bloodborne has by far the best weapons out of any Souls game, and I hope that if we ever get a sequel, we will see them return in some way. The combat in this game is nothing short of amazing and engaging all the way through, and as you progress through the game, you will unlock more and more features that make the combat even better. But let's begin our progress, shall we? The first major area, the city of Yharnam. There are many ways you can set the tone for how your game is gonna be, but I think this ladder sequence is one of the best ways to do it. I vividly remember the first time I heard that screech, and soon enough we will find out where it came from and what horrifying creature it truly was. But first, we have to make our way through the city itself. The enemies you will see will be various people rioting, dogs, crows, and the occasional werewolves. Assuming that you do kill them, you will be rewarded with various loot drops, most commonly being the blood vials and the bullets. One somewhat controversial feature of Bloodborne is the fact that it has gotten rid of the flask system. So, instead, you heal using a consumable item, not something that refills at your resting spots. The problem is that if you are a new player, you might run into some difficulties with this. You know, you will die often, you will use up a lot of blood vials learning the game, and thus you might have to farm for them, or for the currency to buy them, which admittedly can be very discouraging. As for the bullets, guns and some main weapons require them. It can be a bit disheartening to learn your parry timings when you know that you do so at the expense of a resource. Although, honestly, I don't think it's as bad of a problem as the vial system, and you will see why a bit later. For now, just knock out some beasts, eh? If anybody ever tells you Bloodborne isn't a turn-based game, show them this. As we continue our exploration, we find ourselves on this bridge. It's about persistence, right? This is where we meet the first boss, introducing the Cleric Beast. The first thing you might notice about this guy is that its design is kinda reminiscent of Manus. The second thing you might notice is that, oh my god, where did my HP go? It's not a difficult boss by any means, but it can throw you off balance with the amount of damage it can do. It has a grab attack, a jump attack, a slam, and a multi-hit combo. That said, it's extremely weak to fire, so just throwing a couple of Molotovs at it should make quick work of him. I would say that he is a decent introduction to the bosses you will find in Bloodborne. Staying up close, remaining aggressive, and utilizing any and all consumables that you have is key to victory in this game. And the farther we go, the more true this becomes. Anyway, with our first victory under our belt, it's time to return to our little hub area. At this point, you might notice that the doll who was asleep is now awake. Why is that? Introducing Insight. Insight is a secondary resource unique to Bloodborne, which impacts the game in quite a lot of ways. First of all, you need one insight in order to talk to the doll NPC. Some enemies will only spawn if you have certain levels of insight. And you know what's crazy? Even the music in your hub area will change with certain levels of insight. And on top of that, more insight makes you more prone to certain debuffs. That said, the most important role of this resource is to, well, spend it. You can buy various items using it. So how do you gain insight in the first place? There are 3 different things you can do in order to acquire it. Crush certain consumable items, enter a boss arena, or kill a boss. Anyway, now that we are all leveled up, we are ready to take on the next boss of the area, good old Father Gascoigne.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
He is the first of many hunters that you will fight on your journey. His arsenal is very similar to yours. He uses the Hunter Axe and the Blunderbuss in the first phase. In my experience, as a result of this, he is somewhat more aggressive in the first phase. As soon as he starts his second phase, he starts two-handing the axe, and at this point parrying him becomes, honestly, pretty easy. The fight culminates with him turning into a beast for the third phase. Parrying is no longer effective against him, but now he opens up another weakness: fire. Because of that, Molotov cocktails make the fight infinitely easier. Admittedly, the hardest part of this fight is the arena. You will definitely panic at some points and you will get stuck in one of the gravestones, but other than that, I genuinely don't dislike anything about this fight. It's unironically one of the best fights Bloodborne has to offer, but we will go through all of them, don't you worry. Also, one more important thing. In the boss's arena, we will find a corpse with a piece of loot, a gem. We will find a use for this soon enough, but for now, we make some progress, and we end up in what I like to call the mini-hub area, the Cathedral Ward. Let's go over why I like to call it a mini-hub area. So, in short, you will meet various NPCs throughout your journey. Some of those NPCs are looking for a place to stay in order to survive the night of the hunt. The places you can send them to are the clinic, where you first started the game, and the Cathedral Ward, the place we are at currently. Sending them to the clinic will cause them to die, and if you send them here, they will live. With some exceptions. But we will get into that a bit later. For now, we have a hunt we gotta take care of, and as you explore, you will come across a fellow named Alfred. I am sure nothing bad ever happens to him. He is kind enough to give us some fire papers, and by now, we know that fire is good against beasts, so we will keep this for the right time. Speaking of the right time, allow me to remind you to fix your postures if you're sitting, cause boy we're gonna strap in for this one. Old Yharnam. I wholeheartedly love this place. Before you can access it, you receive a warning on the door that leads to it, and as soon as you step out, you hear a person talking to you.
You there! Hunter! Didn't you see the warning? Turn back at once. Old Yharnam, burned and abandoned by men, is now home only to beasts. They are of no harm to those alone. Turn back, or the hunter will face the hunt.
If you aren't afraid by now, I bet you will be soon enough, because this guy seriously wants you dead. If Yharnam is the equivalent of Prague in the Czech Republic, then Old Yharnam is the equivalent of Killeen, Texas. You will remember your stay here, thanks to the constant bullet rain, explosives all around, and the two veteran hunters, Jura and company. Now, you can befriend him, but chances are, if you're a new player, you have no idea how to do this. So for the sake of the playthrough, we're gonna kill him. Dishonorably. I am not sorry. Besides this power duo, Old Yharnam stands out because this is the place where you encounter some enemies that are afraid of fire. Pulling out a torch makes them hesitant to strike you. We also see something like this in Elden Ring with the Beast Repellent Torch. +1 for the RPG elements. On top of all that, this is also the first area where you can find beast blood pellets. You know how From Software always makes one feature that is universally beloved, but then they never end up doing it again? You know, things like the bonfire aesthetics or boss rematch modes. Well, we have something just as good in Bloodborne, and it's this item. Basically, using one of these grants you a buff. If you deal damage, you will essentially snowball into becoming a killing machine. The more you fill up the bar, the more damage you end up dealing and taking. I love high risk, high reward style systems. But here's a question for you. Can you guess when you're gonna be able to actually benefit from using it? That's right. How about as soon as you meet the next boss, the blood-starved beast? But before we do that, I should also mention that at this point in time, you've probably got a lot of resources from this area, so it might be a good idea to head back to the Hunter's Dream and upgrade your character and weapons. At this point, you will see another reason as to why Bloodborne stands out so much when compared to the other From Software games. Introducing the gem system. This feature alone would require a 30-minute video to explain properly, so please, allow me to try and speedrun this section. Upgrading your weapons will unlock gem slots. Gem slots can be fitted to do various things, primarily increasing your weapon's damage, but they can also provide various benefits like more damage to certain enemy types, changing the element of your weapon, or simply buffing certain attacks that you do. For example, you like using the thrust attack of Ludwig's Holy Blade? You know what you should do? Slap a blood gem that boosts your thrust damage. Enjoy wreaking havoc. Anyway, back to our beast hunting activities. This little puppy has 3 phases, and in each one he becomes increasingly more aggressive. The final phase culminates with the beast releasing a poison cloud that will be present until the end of the fight. It's fair to say that this boss is actually quite difficult. That said, contrary to most beasts, this one can actually be parried. But that's not how I like to fight it. What I like to do is simply throw a blood cocktail to the wall and then do a charged attack behind its back. In other From Software games, this action is known as a critical hit. Rinse and repeat, and you will tame the beast. Doing so will reward you with a chalice. I will get into the importance of this item much later. For now though, we can return to the Grand Cathedral, and lo and behold, a new path is now open to us. Welcome to the Healing Church Workshop. This place is long abandoned by many, but if we ascend this tower, we may find a hunter badge and a door that is currently locked. As you would guess, we will return here later on, but as every tower has an apex, it's wise to remember it also has a foot. Let us do some descending. After a somewhat stressful platforming section, you will come to discover one of the most disturbing areas in the game. From Software loves having an alternate and empty version of the main hub hidden somewhere. They've done this in Elden Ring, they've done this in Dark Souls 3, and they've done this in Bloodborne. My favorite is still the one present in Dark Souls 3, but I gotta say, this one takes the cake for the mystery factor. Why is there another doll? What do you do with the umbilical cord? What's the meaning behind all of this? We shall find out in due time. But for now, we return to exploring the tower and reaching the bottom. I didn't mean to reach it that way, but you know what? Let's try it again. Okay, that's better. When you're down here, you will encounter a pyromancer beast. Something you never see used in the game ever again. I just thought it was cool, so I wanted to point that out. But the main benefit of coming down here is that you will discover an elevator, and thanks to that elevator, you can now access the upper part of the Cathedral Ward. Normally, this section of the map is locked, and if you want to get here, you need to buy a key item. This is honestly one of the many reasons why I love Bloodborne so much. It rewards you for exploration, and it does so time and time again. Anyway, here comes one of the first NPCs that you can save. So, saving this young lady is gonna be essential for one of the endings, so we have to do it. I just really hope that nothing bad ever happens to this lady. Anyway, at this point in time, we have two choices. We can either walk up to the cathedral and check out what happens in there, or we can go around it and explore the nearby areas. For the time being, let's do the latter. Doing so will lead you to the Hemwick Churnal Lane. This area doesn't stand out much, and I am personally not a huge fan of it, but I have to give credit where it's due. There's this one murder of crows, and one of them is actually friendly. No, seriously, chances are you will kill it by accident, but if somehow you manage to avoid hitting it, this guy is just gonna stand there and do nothing against you. I really hope that none of you will ever kill it. Besides that, the boss of this area is remarkable, in the sense that the way it interacts with your insight is actually pretty damn unique. The Witches of Hemwick are a duo boss that summon various nightmares throughout the fight. The first time you enter this boss arena, you are granted some insight. But what happens if you leave the arena and spend all of it afterwards? That's right, the boss fight turns into a joke. Having zero insight means that their nightmare creations no longer spawn. So now you can just go from corner to corner to find the hidden witches. It's not a very good fight, okay? But it's extremely interesting when you consider the way it interacts with the insight system. That said, the reward you receive for taking on this boss is something that is absolutely worth it. Behold, the Rune Workshop tool. What this item does is that it allows you to wear various rune items. The runes are basically your rings. You have some of the basic ones that provide various forms of damage reduction, resistances, HP, stamina, more currency, and so on. But you also have some other ones that change your gameplay outright. one of the most notable ones being Odin White. Doing a visceral attack will give you back a bullet. This item alone makes blood tinge centric builds much better. In short, I know it's a bad fight, but go on and finish off the witches for the tool. You will appreciate it in the long term. This right here highlights one of my favorite design decisions of Bloodborne. Every single side boss has a purpose to them. You don't have to kill the blood-starved beast, but it unlocks an entirely new area for you, and a shortcut that lets you skip on buying an expensive key item. You don't have to kill the witches, but it unlocks the item that lets you equip rings and thus make your character stronger. We see this kind of design all the way to the very end, and I wholeheartedly appreciate it. Many games nowadays feel bloated with content that you kind of don't really have a reason to do. Even Elden Ring suffers greatly from this. Bloodborne, on the other hand, doesn't really have that issue. Although, to be fair, there is this one instance where Bloodborne has a system that can be looked at as a time waster, but we will get to that soon enough. For now, let us return to the Cathedral Ward and enter this church. I believe many are gonna say would in this instance. Yes, I too would. Would kill it with fire. Come on, am I right, guys? Vicar Amelia is another beast boss. Imminent weakness to fire. She doesn't prove to be much of a challenge, and her moveset is about what you would expect from a beast her size. Ground sweeps, ground slams, swings and punches for the most part. She also has a pretty dangerous ground AoE, but if you get far away from her, you will be fine. In the second phase, she can heal herself, but this shouldn't be much of an issue if you are able to outdamage her. Just use your fire papers and you will win. Once you defeat her, you will be able to touch this shiny skull. It looks dangerous, so why not do it, I guess. It will play a cutscene, and a pretty disturbing one at that.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes are yet to open. Fear the old blood.
Now we can continue exploring. I should also mention that once you finish up Amelia, you can start the Old Hunters DLC. I am only focusing on the base game of Bloodborne today. But if enough people want it, I could do a similar video, but for the DLC itself. I may not be pregnant, but I will deliver. You still haven't clicked off the video? Jesus man, thanks. I appreciate it. I don't know who you might be, but thanks. It means a lot to me. Anyway, let's keep going. With Amelia dead, we know the password. Fear the old blood. This opens up the next area we can go to, the Forbidden Woods. I love the introduction to this place, as the person who's checking for the password turns out to have been dead for a long time. This place is extremely unfriendly, to say the least. It's home to various traps, dudes throwing oil pots at you, and dogs. Many dogs. You will, however, find a home with what appears to be a friendly individual inside. The voice seems familiar, and it's telling me to check the other side of the cathedral. You know what? What could possibly happen? I don't see any harm in doing that. We're gonna do this soon enough. I also want to mention this little cannon. One of the few instances where you can actually do friendly fire. If you're in co-op and your mate ends up using this cannon, you will die if you get hit by it. I learned this the hard way. Don't be like me. Right next to the cannon, you have this nice and big building. if you end up exploring every nook and cranny, you will find a bloodstain on the ground, which then leads to a man covered in blood, wearing tatters and rags, who seems to be a bit busy eating the corpses of what appears to be recently killed victims. Talking to him reveals that a beast is responsible for this, and that he is looking for a safe haven. If you send him to the Grand Cathedral, he ends up killing everyone you have there. You also have the third option, which is just fighting him. This way you will discover the hard way that he was actually the beast all along. Can I just say that I love it whenever Souls games throw someone shady in your face, and if you let them go unpunished, they will cause trouble. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? I don't really enjoy this next section too much, but thankfully it's a pretty short area. On top of that, you will also find some, what do you even call this? Some odd creatures, to say the least. Little blue guys that kind of look like aliens. I am sure it's nothing to be afraid of, right guys? Anyway, this area culminates with an actually pretty decent boss fight. The Shadows of Yharnam. I know that everyone hates gang fights, and rightfully so. But hear me out, these guys aren't actually too bad. You got 3 different NPCs. One of them has a katana that can extend his arm in the second phase. One has a curved blade that can do a fire wave attack up close. And lastly, you have the red mage of the group. Much like in Final Fantasy I, the red mage is useless. The key to victory in this battle is to parry. You're immune to damage while you're in the visceral attack animation, so this fight essentially becomes a one-on-one, if you keep focusing on getting your parries. Alternatively, you can also hide behind the gravestone. That way the mage can't hit you with the projectiles. In the final moments of the battle, you see them doing a snake summon attack. Hello, Mesmer. Been a while, hasn't it? Man, I have to replay Shadow of the Earth one of these days. I know there have been a lot of people disappointed by it, but I loved it, man. What a good time it was. Anyway, once you defeat them, a path opens up that takes you to a boss that will lead into a point of no return. So let's not do that for now. Before that, let's do some more optional content. One area in particular that I love exploring before everything goes haywire is Yahar'gul. If you're a new player, chances are you will get here unwillingly. There is this one enemy, the Snatcher. If you end up dying to it, which is highly likely, you will be transported to this place. Think of it as your jail area, your volcano manor, your pagoda realm. Here, you will meet Adela the Nun. She's gonna kill the lady we sent to the cathedral ward, so that's not very good because we kinda need her for an ending. So let's just kill her for the safety of it. I'm sorry people, but I have to do this. It's called preventative action. Anyway, with this done, we need to escape, and thankfully, it's an easy thing to do. We just have to kill a lightning-infused undead beast. Man, don't you love this game? The moveset is honestly predictable. You have a couple of ground slams that will cause electric shock waves. You have swipes, and you have an AoE explosion attack. It might not be a complicated boss, but the damage it can deal is gonna shred you. Thankfully, hitting it in the face a few times is gonna make the electric powers go away. So just rinse and repeat, and you'll be fine. Speaking of lightning beasts, remember the guy we sent to the clinic? Let's go check on him. In order to reach that place, we have to go back to the Forbidden Woods, drop down into a hole that is somehow poisoned, because of course it is, go up a ladder that leads to a mass grave, and reach the surface. We are back to the clinic, and we can go into it now, using the back door. Depending on how many people you send here, you will find a different number of patients, and you will quickly discover that they've been turned into these creatures. You can also fight, or choose to spare, Yosefka. I decide not to mess with her because she's actually pretty dangerous. Instead, what I am looking for is an invitation. The Canehurst summons. An old bloodstained summons, inviting an honored guest to the forsaken Castle Canehurst. Rather bafflingly, it is addressed to you. Do not hesitate. The stagecoach leaves from Hemwick Crossing. Don't you love it when the game tells you to explore another area? Now, I have a bit of a dilemma. Remember the stranger in the house who told me to go visit the other side of the cathedral? It's up to you in which order you check these places out, but I personally like to leave Castle Canehurst for last, because the boss can be a bit of a challenge. Anyway, to the other side of the cathedral we go. As of right now, it seems to be a mostly uneventful journey. Kill a couple hunters, dodge a few gunshots, walk up to the door and... What the hell? For a moment, you are stunned at what that could have been. You're teleported to a new location with no idea of what's going on, and in front of you lies another door. The person we talked to at the Forbidden Woods reveals themselves. And of course it's Patches. For those who don't know, Patches is a recurring character in From Software games. He's pretty much the guy who's gonna troll you and profit off of you. He does the same here, but we can't let that stop us. So we march on, into the Nightmare Frontier. Every FromSoft game has a poison swamp area, and in the case of Bloodborne, this would be it. It is otherwise a pretty unremarkable area. You fight various beasts that drop elemental gems upon their death, but other than that, most of the rewards are kind of underwhelming. The main highlight of this place is the Winter Lantern, arguably the most fear-inducing basic enemy ever created by From Software. A weaker version of this enemy can be found in Shadow of the Erdtree too, although it's a bit of a different thing. Anyway, fighting these ones in particular is not worth it, but later on you will end up on a bridge with 3 of them. Assuming you don't do Chalice dungeons, we'll get to them later, and that you don't have the DLC, they are actually the best source for endgame gems, and also a good source for blood echoes. But with this one in particular, we just kill it once, and we move on. Here comes the big baddie of this area, the Amygdala. This boss is kind of like a dragon, in the sense that there isn't much point in attacking the legs. Instead, you should try to aim for the head, or the arms. The boss likes to do a couple of ground slam attacks, which leave the hands open for a few seconds afterwards. So you do have some damage windows. Another strategy to beating it is just baiting out the jumps. That way you can get some pretty easy headshots on the poor sod. It's not a particularly hard fight, but the camera is just straight up awful. Beating this one will net you another chalice, and I know I said it before, but trust me, we will cross that bridge when we get there. With the Amygdala taken care of, we have one more optional area to do. That's right, time to get down with the royalty. Onward to the Hemwick Crossing, and now we may finally get to one of the coolest areas and... oh come on! Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I actually had no idea that it is possible to kill the horses that are meant to take you there. Thankfully, this is a From Software game, so you can just reload the area and you're gonna be fine. Welcome to Castle Canehurst. I love this castle. It's one of the few exceptions where From Software makes a snow area that's actually very fun. I kind of wish it was bigger, because I love exploring castles. This place also has the benefit of having enemies that are actually worth farming. You can get a pretty good amount of bloodstone chunks here, which can take your weapon up to +9. So hey, if you want to farm, go on, hunter. This area is also home to one of the best bosses and one of the worst runbacks of all time. Enter Martyr Logarius. Actually, don't enter him. Come on, you know what I meant. Anyway, when you were partying, I studied the Glock. While you were busy having premarital sex, I was watching Bloodborne speedruns. While you wasted your days at college in pursuit of vanity, I cultivated inner beasthood. And now that the world's on fire, and Logarius has defeated your mates, you come seeking my help? Alright, I mean, I love this boss. His phase 1 is basically a projectile spam. What I like to do is bait out a skull attack, get up close to him, hit him once, and repeat this until he enters phase 2. Defeating him grants you the Crown of Illusions, and if you wear this item, you will discover an invisible wall that takes you to the Queen of the Vile Bloods. Becoming her servant allows you to gain access to the Rivers of Blood 0.5, so I would say it's worth looking into becoming her potential puppet. This will also lead to the continuation of Buddy Alfred's quest. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't want to do it because I want him to stay alive, you know? Anyway, with that done, we have finished all of the side areas, and we can finally continue into Bergenworth. This area is quite possibly one of the smallest areas From Software has ever made. And, as you would expect it also happens to be kind of boring. It doesn't matter though, sometimes we all need a come and go situation. The boss of this place, Rom, the vacuous spider. I know there's gonna be people watching this who never played Bloodborne. If you have arachnophobia, click away. Now. What? Still here? Okay, let's do some spider hunting. Rom is basically the definition of an ad fight. It's pretty much a worse version of the Duke's Dear Freya from Dark Souls 2. Yes, I will repeat it again. It's a worse version of a Dark Souls 2 boss. Trust me guys, Dark Souls 2 is an amazing game, go play it. Anyway, you will have random spiders spawning in that have armor on them, and so you need to hit their weak spot if you want to do any meaningful damage. If not, you can just aim to kill Rom and ignore the spiders. He is not that difficult, but he can destroy your HP very easily. I think that out of all of the bosses Bloodborne has to offer, this guy is pretty much one of the worst ones. Of course, there is another who takes the cake for it, and we will get to him soon enough, don't you worry. But for now, we must witness a change we brought in with our own two hands. Welcome to the Blood Moon, Hunter. Do you remember the Snatchers who brought you into Yahar'gul? Yeah, well, they are all dead now. All that's left are these amygdala-like creatures looking over Yharnam. You know, I felt kinda bad about this. These guys are bad, sure, but if I had to choose between some dude with a bag and Cthulhu, I think the choice would be pretty obvious. You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of situation. In any case, cosmic beings or not, nothing will stop my desire for exploration. If you're bad like me, you might miss it the first time you play, but you can discover a very important key item. The key to the Upper Cathedral. We're gonna take care of this at the tail end of the game. For now, we have some other priorities. I mean, Yharnam is basically effed up, and we have to put an end to this. How do we do that? By taking out a worst version of the Tower Knight. Guys, this is the second time a Bloodborne boss is a copy of a boss from a previous game that somehow ends up being worse than the predecessor. In all seriousness, the One Reborn is probably the most forgettable boss in the entire game. When I say that he's like the Tower Knight, I genuinely mean it. He's just a guy who is constantly being buffed and assisted by some other NPCs. Now, sure, it's different. and admittedly, it is much harder than the Tower Knight. But I still consider it to be disappointing. The one unique thing about this boss is the fact that it has the most amount of feet out of any From Software character. By my estimates, this guy has about 37 feet, give or take. Let that sink in for a moment. Upon his defeat, you can move forward and discover a corpse just sitting in a cockchair. I wonder if this person is gonna be a relevant character. We are a Souls protagonist, so of course we touch whatever we see. Okay, I think this was a bad idea. We end up getting teleported to the lecture hall. We have been here before, when Patches tricked us, although this is a different floor. I also want to mention, if you take your time looking around, you will find something important on this floor. A note mentioning 3 umbilical cords. I wonder how is that gonna come into play later on. Anyway, back to Patches. You can actually end up meeting him and catching him by surprise, and in typical Patches fashion, he begs for forgiveness. Of course we grant him mercy, he's Patches. Anyway, instead of going into the Nightmare Frontier, we can now go into another realm, the Nightmare of Mensis, where we shall face off against the greatest evil of all, the Eye of Sauron. If we could fly the eagles to Mordor, this wouldn't be an issue, but sadly we don't have that luxury. Instead, we have to walk all the way to the building where we have this eye. But first, of course, there's gonna be spiders, cause why not? I'm gonna be honest, I actually kind of hated it here the first time around. I used to die a lot, to say the least. The enemies are a bit tough, and if you're careless, you're gonna fall into the bottomless pits. Or are they actually bottomless? In any case, if you thought that Cthulhu, monster spiders, the Eye of Sauron, and women were the scariest thing around, think again. Bird dogs. I repeat, bird dogs. I hope that whoever came up with this idea got a very nice bonus. I don't speak Japanese, but if I could, I would say good job. I wish I could also say good job to whomever designed this next boss, Micolash, the host of Nightmare. This guy is awful, and he might be my most hated. So, he's pretty much a puzzle. You chase him around, and you want him to run into this empty room so that you can wail on him. And then he disappears, and you basically have to chase him again. Or you can just, I don't know, throw a couple of poison knives at him. I prefer that approach. I hate you, Micolash. He also has a very suggestive moan after he dies, for some reason. That said, I do want to share a personal experience of mine with Micolash. This is very personal, and it has nothing to do with the rest of Bloodborne, so please, by all means, skip it over if you wish. So, where I live, the 15th of August is a national holiday, which means that I get a day off work. Sounds good, right? I remember on the 14th, I came home and I just played Bloodborne with a friend, and we basically got stuck on Micolash for 4 hours. I know that sounds very annoying, and it was a pain in the ass, for sure, but it was fun, honestly. I had a good time, and ultimately, it goes to show that even a terrible boss can be fun with the right company. With Micolash dead, we can continue our ascent. To get around this massive place, we use the elevators. But here's the thing. One of them closes whenever you enter, but the other one does not. You might be wondering if this has any significance, and the answer is yes. Yes, it does. You can get off of it, and you will end up on this platform which leads to a bridge with... oh god. 3 winter lanterns. Woo, I'm so excited. No, but seriously, this is the farming spot I mentioned earlier. I am not gonna bother doing it for now because I don't really have to, but if you want to farm, you can do it here. Anyway, the other reason why you want to go here is because the Eye of Sauron can be discovered on this platform. Kind of. We pull the lever and we watch it fall. We're gonna get to it a bit later on, just give it some time. We go back to the elevator and this time we go all the way to the top. Welcome back, Shadows of Yharnam. I don't really like to fight them here because the arena is not really made for fighting them. So instead, I do the secret Joestar technique, something that Pirate Software himself is proficient in. I run. In fact, I run so far ahead that I am already at the next boss. Can you believe that? Murgo's Wet Nurse is another boss that people are kind of split on. I personally enjoy it, although sometimes it feels like the fight can go on for a bit too long. The boss has a bunch of swords and arms that he likes to flail around, so even getting behind him can be a bit risky. One of the moves I really enjoy seeing is the cross slash that makes the boss disengage. It's just very enjoyable to dash into the attack and keep the pressure up. It also has this one ability where it summons a shadow clone. That said, this is not a phase change ability, but it's more like a skill based on a timer. So if you really want to, you can just run in circles and you're gonna avoid it for the most part. Defeating this boss will grant you the text Nightmare Slain. Unfortunately, the nightmare is far from over. You will also receive a third of the umbilical cord. The same item we have seen mention of in the lecture hall. The same item we have found in the abandoned workshop. Guys, I think we're getting to the end. Going back to the Hunter's Dream, we will discover that it is now burning, and the night is slowly coming to an end. Before we wrap it up, there are a few things that we can do still. One of them is checking on our beloved NPCs in the Grand Cathedral. If you go there at this point in time, you will see that one of the ladies is missing. But a trail of blood. If you follow it, you will eventually find her breaking down over the fact that she gave birth to a monstrosity. I believe that this is an accurate representation of what my own mother went through when I came to be. But in the case of this lady, we best put her out of her misery, and doing so, we can get the final umbilical cord. So, what do we do with it? I don't know. Let's just crush them all and see what happens, right? That said, we do have one final stop before we meet our so-called mentor character. We have to go to the apex of the Healing Church workshop again, and with the key we obtained during the Siege of Yharnam, we can finally open the gate to the upper cathedral ward. Despite it being a small area, I have to admit, it succeeds at being a memorable one. An abandoned church, overtaken by werewolves, aliens, and the ever-brilliant Gold Musk? What are you doing here, buddy? Jokes aside, if you interact with this NPC, you get the make contact gesture, something we can do with the Eye of Sauron we have previously taken care of. But before we go there, we have two more boss fights to go through. First off, the Celestial Emissary. Kind of a joke boss, but one that can be a fun fight, I guess. It's just a bunch of aliens, and once you kill the main one, it turns into a big one, and so you just kill it again, and that's about it. There really isn't much to say about it, but it does feel good to just whack a bunch of stuff, you know? It's kind of like Deacons of the Deep, but somehow worse. The next boss will more than make up for the fact that this one was way too easy. Glass is glass, and glass breaks. So we break this window, we walk into it, and we're gonna find what I like to call the most difficult boss in Bloodborne, the base game anyway. Abritas, the daughter of Cosmos. So, she has a head slam attack, which leaves her open for a few seconds. It has a bunch of tentacles that she likes to flare around. It has a charge attack that can sometimes insta-kill you. It has a grab attack that will insta-kill you. It has an attack that can do frenzy build-up. It has an aura debuff that will constantly damage you, which then renders the rally mechanic pretty useless. And to top it all off, it has a pretty strong magic attack that has the potential to, you guessed it, insta-kill you. Yeah, I'll be honest, I struggled a lot against her. Always. Defeating her will grant you the final chalice needed. I promise you, we are almost there, just hold on a few more minutes and we're gonna talk about the chalices. For now, we have to talk about Gehrman, the final boss, and the endings. Bloodborne has 3 endings, and in my opinion, they are the best endings ever done by From Software. I am personally not a huge fan of the endings where you have to fight the same boss, but depending on your items, you can get a different ending. Bloodborne, and to a lesser extent Sekiro, is different. Hey man, I gotta admit that Shura ending is satisfying as hell. But Bloodborne is even more different. The first ending in Bloodborne involves you submitting yourself, accepting that the night is over, and then waking up from the nightmare. You get up, and things seem to be normal again. You never look back at all the stuff that happened. It's all in the past, and you don't care anymore. This by itself seems like an okay ending. I mean, sure, you quite possibly missed out on an important boss fight, but at the same time, you can rest now. It's okay. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. The next ending involves saying no to Gehrman, which in turn leads to an all-out fight between the two of you. This is nothing short of amazing. He is an excellent hunter, and you can tell by the way he fights. His moveset consists of pulling you in, shooting you down, leaping around with the sight, and various other combo moves. To top it all off, he does a massive AoE attack that can mess you up for good. He is quite challenging, but he can be beat. And doing so, you grant him the favor that he wanted to bless you with. But the night is still not over. Here comes the Moon Presence. Gehrman was pretty much the puppet of the Moon Presence. He was suffering through this never-ending nightmare, and the reason he wanted to kill you so badly is because he simply didn't want you to suffer the same fate he does. Talk about a gut-wrenching feeling. But there is one way to prevent all of this. That's right, by eating the umbilical cords. The skies turn red. I may soon lay dead. But this is my redemption. The fight itself is relatively easy compared to Gehrman. The things that make the boss stand out are the fact that it can prevent you from using your blood vials, and it has an undodgeable attack that will set your HP to 0, although you can gain it back thanks to the rally mechanic. This attack also stuns the boss for a few seconds, so this is basically free damage. The nightmare will be over the moment you land that finishing blow. So, the question is, what happens next? Well, to put it simply, you become a godlike presence yourself. And this is up to interpretation, but with you around, maybe, just maybe, the cycle of the hunt will finally come to an end. You know, I have a feeling that I might be forgetting something. Oh yeah! I haven't used the blood of Ariana. Huh. Oh well, that's a shame. I guess I will do it next time. Anyway, I'm gonna be right back real quick. I need a glass of water. Wait a second. Glass? Chalice. Okay, Chalice dungeons. Let's talk about them. They suck. Next. Okay, fine, I'll go a bit more in depth. They are optional content that provide a bit of dungeon crawling. It's quite possibly the most hated part of Bloodborne in many people's eyes, and I can see why. I personally don't mind them. I enjoy doing them, and I honestly would go as far as to say that they are some of my favorite things to do, just to relax and, you know, have a good time. They do provide some very good rewards, but in order to reach that part, you pretty much have to do over 10 hours worth of dungeon crawling. And honestly, some of these bosses can be frustrating to say the least. Still, I am glad they are just optional, and if you don't want to, you never have to look at them. Let's ask the big question now. Does Bloodborne need a remaster or a remake? Now, yeah, of course, what are we talking about? I feel like everybody feels this way. But let's be honest here. I believe that the 30 FPS is not even the top 3 biggest issues with Bloodborne. I mean, you cannot change your build, upgrade materials for weapons are scarce, the counter hit mechanic sucks, and some areas are just way too populated with enemies. But still, 60 FPS and HD textures would be nice. I especially wish it was on PC. I'm begging you, Sony, please just give it to us. Thank you. But anyway, with all of this said, was Bloodborne actually a good game? Yeah. Is it a perfect game? No. But it's one that is remembered as such by many, and it's one game that continues to have a massive and very vocal fanbase. And if you have played Bloodborne yourself, chances are that you understand why. Thank you very, very, very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I also want to say thank you to each and every single person who has watched up until this point. I know this was a huge investment from you, and I do not take it for granted. Thank you for giving me your time, seriously. I appreciate it. For now, I want to wish nothing but amazing things for you, and I really hope I will see you again soon. Take care, everybody.
You may rest here too, if you like.